Alternate Pathways is a project that I kind of got based on one of my film classes. I had done a documentary about a jewelry smith in Kansas City, and I thought his story about how he got his job was really interesting. And then I'm also thinking about getting a job now that I'm getting close to graduating. And so both of those kind of came together and were the inspiration for this project. And I just wanted to ask people, like, how did they get their jobs that they're in, you know, what their career path is like, and then kind of see, like, am I on the right track? Do I know where I want to go? Like, what things am I not thinking about currently that I need to look out for? And so those were kind of all the inspiration for the actual project itself. The show itself, I did them as 3 separate episodes because they're really 3 different life or parts in their career path. You've got Chase, who's really early in his career, and so he's just starting and kind of learning where he's going and kind of figuring that out. And then there's Ricky, and he's further along, but he's actually coming back to school because he's realized some of these regrets that he's had. And then there's Matt, who's kind of this, like, more set in his career, and he kind of knows what he's doing. And he's had some of those changes that Ricky's done, and he's had some of those thoughts that Chase has had where it's like, well, maybe this isn't what I want to do. So it's almost like a life cycle of people through 3 separate people, but they're all very similar careers and very similar degrees. And so it's really interesting because each of them, I could see a part of them in the next interview. So it's really interesting.
So I don't think I'm gonna actually be staying here that much longer. I'd give it like a year at most.
This is my friend Chase, an editor and director at KS&T. We've known each other since 5th grade, and both had very similar interests in high school.
So out of high school, I made my mind up and I wanted to go into journalism. I made that up, I'd probably say sometime within my senior year of high school. I decided that I wanted to go into journalism and working with cameras. So I always wanted to work in a TV station, even though I hardly ever watched the news. I just thought that that could be a fun thing to do, and it was kind of just like an extension of what I did in high school since I worked at a high school TV station. And I assumed it was going to be somewhat similar, which it is, and it isn't some, like, because you're going to have obviously a lot more chaos in an actual newsroom than you are in like a high school thing that does 1 show a day versus on an average day we do like a 4:30, 5, a 6, a 9 that's an hour long, so it's basically 2 shows plus a 10. I mean, we do tons of shows every single day.
But it doesn't drop us down too much, just we're getting cooler for extra.
During college, Chase applied for an internship at KS&T. This was his first step on his future career path.
For one of my classes that's required is you have to do at least 1 hour of internship credit. But then I signed up here, and then I got an email from the news director basically saying, like, hey, I got your thing, would you want to come in? And he basically said, you can do as much or as little as you want, which means I can either have this be like a job shadowing type thing, or you can do like full on where you're directing all the shows every single day. And then I started off just by observing. And then I moved into learning how to code, where after the shows were done, and he would go through the rundown and then delete the coding, and then I'd have to recode it, and he would look over it. And then once I got good at that, then I actually learned how to start doing stuff over on the computer, just punching through.
Chase is a hard worker, and as he learned to do more, he was offered a job at KS&T when he graduated.
So I enjoy working with the people here, especially on the weekends. It's really chill, and we can just kind of talk and goof around and stuff like that. Just think it's kind of fun to, I guess, just punch through the rundown, and especially when you're trying to maybe design a new shot and you're constantly, I feel like it's kind of like a coding kind of thing where you keep trying all these different things and nothing's working, and then all of a sudden you get the right thing and it just kind of snaps, and you get like that dopamine rush of, oh, it finally worked.
Knowing all this and having talked to Chase about his job on a number of occasions, I was shocked when he said he was looking to change his path.
I don't think there's going to be a future of me in this job, even though I like it and I think it's interesting. One of the big things for me, like not even just that the uncertain career future, is that there's not a lot of job openings, surprisingly. I think what tends to happen is that most of the directors got in here before I did and are in kind of like their, like maybe like mid-career, like 40s or like in their 50s, and so they still have quite a while before they retire and their jobs open up.
So what is the future for Chase? Trains.
The job that I'm looking at as being like a career that I stay in a long time, I think Amtrak would be really interesting, working in Kansas City. Trains aren't really gonna go away, especially now that Amtrak just launched a whole new program, or initiative, or whatever you wanna call it, where they're introducing a whole bunch of new rails that they hope on building. And if they're building them, that means that hopefully they own them, which will be really good because Amtrak doesn't own most of their rails. They're freight rails, which means that every single time a freight train comes, Amtrak has to pull over and wait and wait and wait. And so that causes times to be delayed a whole bunch. But since they have this new initiative, then that means that hopefully train travel will increase. And I don't think it'll ever go away just because it's kind of like a novelty kind of thing and people love trains. It's probably just like some thing in the back of my mind that I had like a bajillion Thomas the Tank Engine movies that I'd always watch, and it's probably just something like that trains are pretty cool. So I think it's just kind of like I've been around trains quite a bit.
With Chase's work ethic and interest, I know his alternate pathway is on the right track.
Each episode has a different insight, I would say, because they're all so different. The first episode with my friend Chase, I always thought he loved his job. Like, I mean, he would talk about it and he was like, yeah, I mean, it's so fun because he literally talked about, like, for a while he was just playing Minesweeper in between the shows. And so he would just goof around, and so he really enjoyed that. But then when I interviewed him, I mean, it was surprising to hear that something that he really loved, I mean, he just couldn't really see himself continuing. And I think that's a number of things. I cut up the interviews quite a bit, so like you really don't get a lot of that behind the scenes as much, but it was just kind of like watching out for, you know, even if you're interested in something and really love something, there may still be the chance that it's not going to be, you know, my full career. For my editing process, I don't know how normal it is, because I have done a lot of brute force learning for editing in general. And so normally what I do is I'll go through my interview first, and then I will cut it up into the sections that I think are interesting, and I'll squeeze those all together. And most of these interviews are about an hour. So I'm taking an hour of footage and trying to consolidate it into roughly 5 minutes. So I normally start with getting it cut down to 20 minutes. That's usually where I can start looking and really just chopping. Because then I'm starting to look at, you know, what different topics work together and actually make a cohesive storyline. And then I'm also going back. The model really was Chase's first episode. As soon as I had laid that out and I was like, okay, this is how I'm doing it. Then with Ricky's, I was like, okay, well, Chase's went this way. And so same with Matt's. I mean, Chase and Ricky's went this way, so that's how I want it to go. And so for me, it's really trying to keep that pacing and that same storyline. But then also, you know, if Ricky starts talking about the movies he made in film school, that's really not pertinent to what he's doing now. So I cut those out. And so that's one of the things is trimming the fat. And then I think it's probably different for me because I have the film background. So I actually move the order of the interview a ton. And so that was one thing. Ricky was surprised when I showed it to him, actually, because he was like, oh, I didn't even think about, because I layered different parts of his interview in different areas. And so that was one thing. I'm also looking at almost like a math equation, and the order of operations are still going to be the same. But it'd be nice if all the addition was over here, and then the multiplication, and then any exponents. And so that's one of the things is it's really making it, just chopping it down. Like that's the biggest part. And then from there, I when I'm recording, when I actually go out and film, I try and film B-roll for about an hour. That's usually pretty helpful. With Ricky's, I ended up not having as much, so I was really like having to go back and record more. And then with Chase's, I had a ton of extra, so that was one really nice thing. And so it kind of depends on the environment, but then I'm just covering up cuts and making sure I'm both trying to show what they're working on, but also what they're talking about, and then just making it, look like a fun job at the least, show off the cool parts of it, which is something that's always really fun for me.
I always joke and say like I'm my own boss in a way. So I would say like I love working on my own stuff. I love like finding ways to be creative all the time. So yeah, having that with VR and be able to like control what I want to do and be my own boss is very enjoyable.
This is Ricky Smith, a CEO, animator, graphic designer, marketing director, and pretty much any job needed to create a company.
VR is my company, short for the Ricky Smith Company. And with that, it's been like the name I use for all my projects. If I had to animate a short or just any kind of like comic I had, I would put down the name VR, but I wasn't really like selling anything at the time. It was just like just a name I used. But I knew I really wanted to like make it into an actual brand and like bring personality and character to it. So what I did was I created like this new company called VR Cards, and basically the idea with it was originally to find a way to make greeting cards more interesting. I made a bunch of parodies of like Nickelodeon magazine and like different movies and stuff, and from there it gave me the idea to like pretty much make anything that's a rectangle into a card.
But the R cards are much more than greeting cards. They're a collectible.
I hesitate to call it a cinematic universe, but I thought it was a really cool idea where there's an incentive to collect them, where you can see there's a bigger story going on, how they are self-contained in a way, but yeah, again, it's not like Hallmark.
I'm really proud of that project because like in the past, I have a bad habit of like starting a project and then abandoning it for something better and more fun. And that kind of got me nowhere for years. It's really a good way for me to like push the brand to expand what I was doing and all, and like have something that's actually tangible and build a brand from there. I do a wide range of like different projects. So either it's some kind of voiceover project, a motion graphic, like an illustration. It just kind of depends on what I'm feeling that day, honestly. I usually like to have like a main project I'm working on, but then also have like a ton of sub-pod projects I'm also working on as well.
Ricky has to balance a lot of different projects creating VR, but his current path is expanding the brand.
I had this whole like a picture like a marble, like phases. I have phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, and right now I'm at phase 1 where it's everything I can work on by myself. So with that, I have some podcast ideas, and one of the podcasts I've created is a Nick and Marty radio show podcast. So my brother was little, I used to give him teddy bear stories where I would voice some of our stuffed animals. The idea of the show is that my character, I'm all grown up now, so my toys went off on their own to like, live their own lives and all, and basically like this is our way to catch up. For example, my favorite one is truck material. The thumbnail is Nick has like a Prius and his body's like morphed into a Prius. It's really funny. But yeah, so far I think I have about 6 episodes, and yeah, it's really funny.
Ricky's career path started as a kid, with a passion for art and a love of cartoons.
What inspired me as a kid, like, I'm a huge fan of my childhood. I'll say like a lot of my stuff I do is inspired by my past. So like, whether it be like the design styles or just like animation in general, like I grew up watching all those like late 90s, early 2000s Nickelodeon Cartoon Network shows. And, just seeing like the characters on screen, I'm like, I gotta make that. Pretty much anything from that era, I try mimicking, and basically from there, like, started evolving to my own style because it was kind of like a melting pot of like all those things I was inspired by. Yeah, I think it just being able to like take what's in your head and make it is like the best part about being a creative.
Ricky graduated from KU in 2018 with a film degree, but his path led him back to KU.
I think I do have some regrets that I wish I would have originally studied advertising and Stratcom first, because I feel like that's more of like a solid job outside of college, because unfortunately, even though my film degree was great, I wasn't able to find a job right out of college, so I did a lot of freelance work, but with that, it's kind of tough to like consistently get gigs and have a day job. So right now I'm kind of working on getting a degree within media arts and Stratcom to pair with my film degree. And basically I would love to work as like a creative director for an agency or like in-house for a company and make ads for them while also working on the R. And my hope is eventually to turn the R into like a full-on production studio or making movies, TV shows, and other like family entertainment related things.
Are you interested in learning more information? Well, here's where you can find it.
So I have my website for the R cards. It's tagrcards.com. Same name for Instagram. I post there pretty often now. Also TikTok, same name too. And my personal account at Ricky Smith Art. You can check out some of the artwork I'm working on, different projects and things like that.
From Ricky, his interview was fun because he's also a film student, or he graduated with film. And so I always knew that film is like kind of one of those degrees where it's like you can get a job no matter what, but it's not going to be what you want necessarily. And so it was interesting to hear from him that, he was able to do some of the stuff he wanted to, but it was like a side thing. And so he had this day job. And so I think keeping myself open is one of the biggest things I learned from Ricky, just because he really talked about, he talked about this like Nickelodeon archivist job that he could have had the opportunity to do, but he was so dead set on being an animator, he didn't do it. And he said he kicks himself all the time for not doing that. And it's like, now I'm worried, like, I don't want to just give up on some opportunity because, I'm not thinking of it as like, that's not film, that's not what I want to do. So I think being open-minded. I have always enjoyed, I call it, I don't know, there's no name for it, it's a jump cut, but I have always enjoyed when there's like an interview and then it'll be almost the identical shot, it'll just be pushed in. And to me, that's like a beautiful cut, but I don't know, other people have different opinions, but I do generally try if I do have something that's too similar, I'll try and find some other B-roll that I can use. That's more of a recent thing. Try and cover up those jumps and those cuts, and then that way it at least looks, so even if, if I'm doing an interview here and then maybe we cut to a different shot of me talking, I would maybe box that in with B-roll on one side, then the new clip, and then B-roll on the other side. And then that way it looks as if we just covered it up, but really this is an entirely different section of the interview. And so I think that's the main thing, is almost hiding the cuts in a way, making it look as if, I think about it as almost the way I see/think. It's like I'm looking at you to start, and then 2 seconds later, I'm looking over there because something shiny's over there, and then I'm back to you. And so that's kind of the way I think of the edits is, it's as if the person watching it is looks away, looks back. And so the B-roll is just whatever's over here, so.
I have lots of interests that probably spurs from my upbringing. My father was an engineer. He was always kind of DIY, making things and including us in it. And so we always had that mentality that, we can do whatever we want, we can make whatever we want, we can learn that and do it ourselves. So always repairing things or creating things on our own.
This is Matt Bristow, Makerspace Coordinator for KU Libraries. His job? To help foster a creative space for students.
We have a lot of different offerings, anything from 3D printing to audio and video recording and editing, and then all sorts of arts and crafts that students can come in and kind of spur their creative energy or de-stress to allow them to unwind and work on a project they want to work on. Makerspace can be anything you want it to be, and we're making it here. We're doing things that are unlike what other university makerspaces do. For instance, propagating succulent plants, starting a seed library, and it's just a matter of what you're interested in and what you think students might be interested in, and something that can spur that creative energy in the students.
Matt has many skills, from 3D printing to green screening, and it's his career path that's taught him those skills.
I did not see this as the next stepping stone in my career path. I have a journalism degree from here at KU, and I did both print journalism with the UDK and also with the TV station. And after graduation, I went into photojournalism, and I worked at a few newspapers, and that kind of culminated with just kind of burning out just because of the workload. With small town newspapers, you're the primary photographer, the only photographer, so it's kind of a drain over time. It's kind of funny that it kind of comes full circle. After I got burnt out with newspaper, I was like, okay, I'll just take a stable, well-paying government desk job. When I met my wife, it's kind of like, she's a musician, she plays the piano, re-spurred my creative energy. So we play music together. During the pandemic, we had a tiny porch concert.
She's got a way about her. I don't know what it
When his wife graduated and got her professorship, she got a position in Indiana. This was an important stepping stone in Matt's path.
It was like a time to reset. It's like, okay, what can I do? Are my capabilities in journalism, are they still relevant? While I was there, I had a position in the media center at the university, helping students with similar things that we actually offer here in the makerspace.
Matt didn't just help students. He continued his education, getting a degree in history, and even created a historical documentary series while working for the media center.
Then we wanted to move back home, and so I saw this position. I was like, well, that doesn't really sound like something maybe that fits my skill sets or I have experience in. And my wife really encouraged me. It's like, oh no, I think you would be great at this. You like all of these things. And one aspect was 3D printing. And I was like, well, I don't have any experience with that, but I'm familiar with it, but I can learn. That's the biggest part of it. It's like, if you have an interest with it and it feels like something that you could do, it's always a possibility to learn that and acquire that skill set. If you see that you meet some of the criterias, the preferred qualifications of the job, but don't meet all of them. Don't write yourself off as saying, oh, well, I have these capabilities, I have this professional experience, but I don't have this. It doesn't mean that you aren't qualified for that position. Don't sell yourself short is what I've been told often. Like, sometimes you forget how awesome you are at doing something, and you sell yourself short. So it's good to really advertise all that you're able to do and let your credentials shine.
Matt has a unique perspective on his past, one that has helped him tremendously.
A lot of people do say that, oh, I wouldn't change a thing about the path I took to get to where I am career-wise. Looking back, you always have those second guesses. What happens if I did this, or what happens if I did that? But I try not to dwell on the past. I think that every step I've taken, whether it's been something that's advanced my career opportunities or you could see it as maybe hindering them, I see it as an important step to getting to where I am. And the things that I've learned from both the positive experiences and the negative experience has shaped me as an individual and helped me grow and prosper in my current career.
Matt's future is bright, but he may not even have to leave the makerspace for a change of pace.
Where do I see myself in 5 to 10 years? This is a great career opportunity to be here at KU, and the educational opportunities that I could expand upon are right here at my fingertips. And so who knows where my interests might take me, what education I might pursue. What is the future of this makerspace? What does it have to offer? It's whatever direction we want to go in, what interests students are constantly having that are constantly changing. It's up in the air, and I like that part of like journalism. It's like every day at the newspaper, you didn't know what the story might be. It is always changing. So having that aspect of new and exciting opportunities and stories to tell, whether you're telling somebody else's story or you're part of that story, I think that would definitely be part of my future career. My wife and I are in the process of closing on an old farmhouse on the other side of the lake, 1865 stone farmhouse that needs some loving restoration. And so that is my next makerspace project, I guess, and will be the location where I can expand larger makerspace, personal and professional makerspace possibilities.
While Matt's house is set stones, he has a piece of advice for anyone questioning their alternate pathway.
If you're about to graduate and don't know, or you're uncertain about what the future holds for you, or if you're currently in a position and are uncertain if that's the career path for you, nothing is set in stone. Don't be discouraged by if you're uncertain about your future. You know, I'm an indecisive person, so it was hard to lock down like, oh, I definitely want to do this career path, because I had so many interests and I was uncertain of how I might turn that into a career. And yeah, the people's interests change. People have multiple interests, so just by going down one path, you're not locked into that for a lifetime. And also, yeah, if you're uncertain, you know, but you're interested in it, go for it. And if it doesn't work out, there are always other opportunities that you can pursue. So don't be afraid to chase your dreams, and don't be afraid if it doesn't work out, because there are other opportunities out there for you.
One thing that really stuck out to me with Matt's interview, and one thing that I think was really important with all of them, was just following something that you're interested in. And that was one thing that they all kind of talked about. I mean, Chase talked about with me, I don't think it made it in the actual edit, but he talked about in high school he was really interested in engineering, and then he took journalism classes, and then so that's why he did journalism. And he talked about how he wouldn't want to change that, even though, you know, he didn't necessarily like his career that he was in. He was happy that he had that newsroom experience. And then with Ricky, he talked about, you know, he had followed his passion for film, but then he realized it wasn't just film. He'd always been wanting to do this creative stuff. And so he's coming back so he can do that creative stuff. And then Matt, it was, you know, for years he had been not doing anything creative, and then he realized how tired he was getting of doing that, and so he came to KU, and now he's working on all these projects and helping students on projects as well. And so I think with all of them, it was really following something you're interested and just pursuing that, because it's really important. And I think it, for me especially, I worry about getting tired of something I'm doing or getting bored. And so that was one of my big worries was, you know, can I do something that I will be interested in by the end of the year? And so this project in that same way was almost an experiment for that, because it's like, am I still going to be interested in doing these interviews by the end of the semester? And I am. So I think it's just, you know, following your heart a little bit and figuring out what you really like to do and following that passion.
That's right. A lot of this kind of series is just me actually asking questions I'm concerned about or worried about. So,
Is it reflecting on you, kind of? Like, how can I get where I want to go? Yeah. That's cool.
If I were to give something from all three of the episodes and something they said, I mean, they really all talked about being open to different ideas and really learning from the experiences they did have. And I think that was one thing really interesting about Chase's interview. In Chase's interview, he talked about not wanting to continue his job, but he also talked about not wanting to change that. Like if he could go back and change something, he wouldn't. And I think that's really interesting, because they all felt like they learned from things that they regretted. And so I think that's one thing, like, you know, doing some self-reflection and like looking at how can I apply this to myself as I'm going out and looking for a career. It's all about, you know, making sure, like, even if I do something that I don't like, or even if I do something that I'm gonna regret in the future, like just learning from that and kind of being able to build and grow off of that, I think is really important. I think the largest thing I learned from this project is really how much I am able to actually do. So in the film department, we are very niched out. And so I don't consider myself a cinematographer. I don't consider myself an editor. Usually I'm doing directing or producing. Those are my two roles, because I'm really good at bossing people around. That's usually what I'm good at. And so coming into this project, I was really worried because I didn't have a cinematographer and I was the editor. And so even though I have those skills, it's hard sometimes to realize that I can do it. And so just trying it and like putting together these pieces, I mean, I was ecstatic with the first one, how it turned out. I was really worried when I was filming it because I was like, the lighting isn't the way, like I don't know how to fix this. And I was trying to figure out the camera all at the same time because again, normally I'm just telling someone else to make the shot look better. And so it was both a learning experience of learning those skills and getting better at them, but also realizing like those skills really aren't that different than what I'm already doing. It's just doing it. And so that's one of the biggest things I've learned is just doing it and I can get it done. And the most challenging part of the project was probably honestly pre-production. I really enjoy like filming and interviewing or like asking someone questions themselves because I like to talk with people. And then I really don't mind editing. I used to dislike it a lot, but the more I do it, I think the better I get, and so it's easier. But the pre-production of like trying to figure out who my subjects were and try and figure out like when can I meet with them, and there were so many schedule conflicts that I almost had to change my last episode because Matt originally was gone a whole week, never emailed me, so I had actually scheduled my mom as a different interviewee and a different subject. And so I had all these changes that I had to make, and I'm happy it turned out the way it did. I think that was one of the things, like it did really turn out in a way that I wouldn't have imagined, but even the first episode was originally going to be way different. I had a friend who just started a job as a snowboard instructor, but he just started there, and then the season changed so quick that he never worked a day. I just wanted to watch him snowboard more or less and put GoPros on his snowboard, and it was just going to be more or less a GoPro video, but and then an interview. But I'm happy it didn't turn out that way, just because I think having both 3 journalism degrees, but also 3 people who had not necessarily similar careers, but definitely like almost the same area of focus, I think that really, made it more concise and a lot more interesting.